Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about an awesome but not super well known technique in chess. It's called the windmill tactic. We're going to go over a typical example first, and then I'm going to show you two professional games where windmill tactics were actually used to great effect in real life. So before we get started, I just want to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like the videos, and if you have any suggestions for things you want me to cover in future videos, please make sure to leave them below in the comments. So, what is a windmill tactic? Essentially, windmill tactic is a series of checks and discover checks that you can use to exploit your opponent to basically dominate them and win a whole bunch of material and win the game. Um, and actually, this position here is a typical example of one. Looking at this position in front of us, first thing we might notice is that we're way behind on material. And the second thing we might notice, if we're paying attention, is that we're actually only one move away from being checkmated ourselves here, which would be this bishop move here. White's bishop already covers these squares. So luckily it's our turn, and luckily we have this bishop here on b7. And you'll notice that wherever I move my rook on g2, we're going to be discovering a check on our opponent's king. And that's very important. So let's go ahead and start the windmill. I think once I get this moving, you guys will understand a little bit better how this works. So, first move we're going to make is rook captures on g3, that knight, and you'll see here the discovered check. Okay? So, white's knight is actually guarding the square, but because of the check, white has to respond to that check first. Cannot capture the rook. The other important thing to see here is that we're discovering a check, and the white king actually only has one move here. He cannot block, he cannot capture the bishop, so his only move is king to h2. And can you guys find another check in this position? If you spotted rook to g2, again, congratulations. So again, the king is in check, and the king only has one move here. Okay, white's only move is going back to h1. And so we've basically completed one revolution of our windmill here. We've captured a knight, and why stop there, basically? So we're going to go ahead and also capture this pawn on g4. And again, this white is basically trapped in this cycle, and they cannot escape. So it kind of sucks to be white right here, if I'm being honest. So white, again, after the discovered check, has to go back to h2. And we're going to hit him with another check on g2 with our rook. And we capture all the material on this rank here, but why stop there again? We have even more things we can capture. So now we're going to go ahead and capture everything on the second rank with these series of checks. So the next move, rook captures the pawn here. Now the king only has one move. It's a different move, but it's basically the same type of situation here for white. So white can no longer go to h2. He obviously can't go here or stay here. So white has to go to g1. And we're going to hit him with this forced check again. Back to h1. And you can see how this is a revolution, a series of revolutions of forced checks where we're simply just capturing all of white's material here. Okay, so we're going to go one more time around. We're going to take this pawn on a2, and we're not done here either, okay, because there's still one more thing we can capture. So again, white's in check. He's got to move his king. He cannot respond to anything our rook's doing. So once it goes back to g1, we're going to go ahead and capture the queen. So this is, I think, a great example of just how dominating a windmill can be. We were losing material. We were about to be checkmated. Now look at this position. We've basically cleaned up. And this game is, easily won for black. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some professional games, some famous games where windmills were used. So this first game is between Carlos Torre and Emmanuel Lasker. I think it was played in a tournament in Moscow in 1925. And Emmanuel Lasker is considered to be one of the best chess players of all time. He was actually world champion for 26 years. I think 1894 to 1920 he was the world champion of chess. So this is a little bit after that, and even a former world champ cannot escape this windmill. So Carlos Torre was playing with the white pieces. The first thing we have to do here is notice the windmill, the potential windmill here. So you can see keeping in mind that typically a windmill is done with a bishop and a rook, you can see that if we move this bishop out of the way, this pawn here on g7 is pinned to the king, because this pawn moving in any direction, let's say, will leave the king in check. So first thing we have to do is recognize the windmill. So we want to move this bishop out of the way. And if you want to, you can pause the video for a few seconds and see if you can find out where we want to put this bishop to begin the windmill. Okay? So I'll give you a few seconds. Okay. So the correct move here is bishop to f6. So again, this pawn cannot capture the bishop, but you'll see how we're setting up a windmill somewhat similar to how it was working before. And typically for a windmill to work, you have to have this set up, and the king basically has to be either cornered, your opponent's king, or also in certain cases, like this one, trapped by his own pieces as well. So now, again, you may have noticed this, but you may have also noticed that when you move this bishop to g6, we're hanging our queen, which seems a little funny. Now, does this cause us to reconsider what we're doing? Not really. So, you'll see how this ends up working out for white in the long run. So, Carlos Torre went and played bishop to f6, and black basically has to capture this queen because his queen's also not undefended here. So black took the queen, and now we begin the windmill. So we begin with rook captures on g7. And again, similar to the previous example, you'll notice black only has one move, and that is all the way to the corner. So now we're going to start gobbling up pieces. So white plays captures on f7, and again, black only has one move with the king. We're going to hit him with another check, and again, he has to go back to the corner. We're going to capture the bishop, and we're repeating this process, basically, this windmill process. Now, Torre did not want to capture this pawn on a7. He didn't want to give black's rook basically an open file here. So after this was done, he actually decided to end the windmill, and he played rook to g5. So again, hitting the king with check, and he's basically going to recapture the queen that he lost to start this whole thing. So after black moves, white captures the queen, and although black has this fork here, basically attacking both the bishop and the rook, white brought the rook down, the king captured, and he hit the pawn on the h file with check. So when it was all said and done, white was up 3 pawns here, and Torre easily won this game. So just another example. And finally, we're going to talk about the game of the century. So this was a game between Bobby Fischer and Donald Byrne, I believe, at the Marshall Chess Club in New York City, which is still active. I think it was played in 1956. Bobby Fischer was only 13 years old. If you follow chess, you may be familiar with Bobby Fischer. He's considered by some to be the best chess player that ever lived. And this game really put him on the map as a young 13-year-old, and basically started his rise to fame, I guess you could say. And eventually, obviously, he became the world champion. So Bobby Fischer was playing with the black pieces. White actually, his previous move was retreating his bishop, attacking Bobby Fischer's king here. So Bobby's first move, and before I start also, I just wanted to mention this is a great example, which you'll see, of a windmill that's not with using a rook and a bishop. There's 2 different pieces here. So you can use windmills with more than just a rook and a bishop. So Bobby's first move was just checking the king with rook to e8, and the king is going to move away. And now he plays the interesting move, seemingly illogical move, I guess, moving his bishop back to e6, attacking here. So basically hanging his queen. Seems a little dicey for black, but let's continue and see how this goes. So here, white said, thanks for the queen. And Bobby Fischer started his windmill, basically. So Bobby Fischer captured the bishop here on c4, checking the white king. White king only has one move. He goes back to g1. And here's the knight move, checking the king. So this is basically the windmill. So again, the king only has one move. Has to go back, and now we have the discovered check. And he went ahead and captured this pawn here on d4, checking the king, one move, going back. checking the king again, repeating the same moves here, and now he plays knight to c3, attacking the rook and checking the king. So once the king moves again, he could just capture the rook here, but Fischer actually found a better move than capturing the rook first. That move was pawn captures that bishop on b6. So he's now discovering an attack on the queen. And you'll notice that black's bishop, because he captured this pawn here before with the knight, is now protecting this knight so the queen cannot capture. So after the queen moves, he plays another move, basically lifting his rook up and attacking the queen a second time. And after the queen captured, he finally went ahead and captured this rook. So just another great example of a windmill technique. Yes, we're down a queen, or Fischer was down a queen, but he's up a rook. He's up 2 minor pieces and a pawn. And this game did go on for a little bit longer, but he was able to close this game out without any problem. So, yeah, another example of a windmill. That time it was with a bishop and a knight. And it's basically all I have for you guys, so I hope you enjoyed that. And again, if you have any suggestions for videos, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.